What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the MindShare podcast. This show is sponsored by Kit's Keep in Touch Systems, a two-time international award-winning marketing suite for sales professionals. We're also sponsored by REM Real Estate Magazine, Canada's premier monthly magazine for real estate professionals. Learn more about our sponsors by visiting my site, mindshare101.com. And while you're there, make sure you download your free copy of my book, The Ultimate Marketing Bundle, as well as learn more about our one-to-one coaching and keynote speaking. Today's episode is number 233. She is the Chief Operating Officer of LePage's corporately owned brokerages, including LePage Real Estate Services, Johnson & Daniel, LePage Sussex, LePage West Real Estate Services, and Mont Tremblant Real Estate, serving approximately 2,000 agents spanning 3 provinces. She joined the corporate brokerages in April 2021 as an accomplished senior level executive with proven achievements in the areas of strategy, sales, operations, marketing, and law. She's a dynamic and personable leader. All right, what about now? Can you
Better.
hear
I
my,
lost you halfway through that.
did my intro get out there?
I got half of it.
Let me tell you. Let's just talk about this for a
Feels
second,
like a Monday.
okay? Because, look, I've been doing these episodes now. This is the 233rd episode. And I do have to say, and I'm hoping that StreamYard is listening right now. This is not a Facebook issue because normally I got my beef with Facebook. Today it's going to be with StreamYard. We have a wired connection. We're not even wireless. We should not have these issues.
I agree.
Anyhow, welcome to the MindShare podcast.
Great to be here.
It is an absolute pleasure. I know you and I had the opportunity of being introduced by somebody when we were at a conference just a couple months ago, and it felt like we just got to talking, and I thought it was a fun conversation. I thought it was a smart conversation, and I thought that it had a ton of value to it. Hence the invitation, and thank you for making the time to join us today. I know you're an incredibly busy person, but I really feel that there's a ton of value that you can add to our listeners right now. We got an amazing audience of amazing people that really take a lot of the value out of these shows. So anyhow, it's an absolute pleasure to have you here.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here.
To get us started, I guess maybe I just shared a little bit about you, and I tried doing some digging because again we met once in person. Read off your bio a little bit, and I actually was pretty blown away by a bunch of the stuff that I read in the bio. But I thought I'd give you just maybe an opportunity here, share a little bit more about yourself, set the stage beyond just the bio that I read. But who are you? What's your day-to-day focus with LePage?
Yeah. Yeah, so like you said, I head up all of our corporately owned stores. So that's about 2,000 realtors across 3 provinces. It's a fantastic group of people. Realtors are some of my absolute favorite people, so my job is fun every single day. And I drive the strategic direction of the company, participate in a lot of merger and acquisitions, so we're always out there looking to get bigger. I noticed in your bio you missed Credit Valley, so we got to update that, right? We purchased that,
there we go. Let's go back.
That brokerage last year, yeah.
Yeah,
So we're
it's
getting
not in there. There
bigger.
you go. That's awesome.
That's okay. Yeah. So we're getting bigger. I think it is an exciting industry. Lots of things have changed. Fun fact: when I was in high school and in undergrad, I actually worked at a real estate office. So I did that for all of my education, all my post-secondary education. So for about 7 years, and it's changed a lot, right? The industry has changed a lot since, let's say, the late 90s, early 2000s. And I think it's exciting. And I think there's a lot that brokerage can do to remain relevant. And I think that realtors have really upped the game. over the last number of years. And I think that's really exciting to watch and support.
We are coming back to that remain relevant comment shortly. I'm
Yeah,
coming back to
sure.
that because that was one of the things that I took as well, was when we got introduced and I understood
Yeah.
what you were doing. We talked a lot about market. We talked a lot about what's
Yeah.
going on out there, and I definitely want to take us down that road right now.
Hmm.
But as I was reading the bio, and I'm like, sales and strategy, I'm like, oh, that's like my jam right there. And I want to pull on some of that from you as well, because I think that
Sure.
there's certainly what to add. But that's interesting. You did work in a real estate office back then.
That's it.
I grew up in a real estate office.
Okay.
My father owned a brokerage for the first 20 years of my life. So that's where I remember typewriters and black and white MLS tear sheets and
Yeah.
whiteboards and, pagers and quarters
Yeah.
and payphones. And boy, has the time changed, right? But I do believe
Yeah.
there's a bunch of stuff that are still happening in this industry that hasn't changed. And again, we'll go down that road for sure.
Yeah. Okay.
Uh,
Perfect.
but here, we're hearing we're hearing a lot of mixed feelings about the market right now. There's a
Hmm.
lot going on out there. There are a lot of agents who are not having much success, and then there's obviously agents who are having much success. Um,
Hmm.
the other thing that strikes me is that Korea just recently announced that the market is on fire. Average price is up by 100,000.
Yeah.
Are we in a good market? Are we in a bad market? What's your take on where we're at right now?
So there's no such thing as a good market or a bad market. There's always a
Oh,
market, right? Number one. We are in a market that is supportive of pricing, but
mhm.
is not particularly kind to volume based businesses, which is all of us. It is coming back slowly but surely. We are looking at right now what we think will be a bit of a spring market in the summer. That's a rarity. Although, if you
Mhm.
look back the past few years, the market hasn't been normal in, year four, I think we're on to, of lack of normalcy.
Yep.
But it's the volume that is lagging, right? Certainly, there are people out there that want to buy. We saw the return of buyers when we moved into this year. Bank of Canada held the interest rate twice. That was the signal people needed to get back out there. Sellers have been slower to return to the game for a number of reasons, but there's just not enough inventory out there. And we can't forget, before all of this, there wasn't enough inventory out there. So the fact that
Right.
sellers aren't coming to the table, plus the lack of inventory we already had, particularly in Toronto, Vancouver, other big markets, it's a bit of a perfect storm for the volume side of the game.
Are you seeing an outlook on that? I mean, just more in a short form answer on this front, but like an outlook on that
Mhm.
that says like, and I love the optimism around the summer market, and I think that everybody needs to get excited about what was just said there, because I know that you do understand the market, you are studying what's going on out there, so the trends there are it's not coming out of thin air to make a comment like that.
Mhm.
Um, and I think that is an exciting perspective for for the industry itself to say, hey, the next summer months should be busier than they are now. Is that's what you're feeling?
That's what we're seeing.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's what we're seeing, right? And we
cool.
track this. We our leading indicators, right? Appointments, the new listings that are coming to market, all of those are up, and they're up dramatically over last month, right? So if we continue to see that, we'll continue to see a stronger summer market. When you would expect that some of those indicators would start dipping down, right, as you get into July. Doesn't seem to be the case right now. Overall, volume, we're sitting around 2018 numbers. That's not where it should be, right? Like it's not just because we want more volume. That's not enough
Mhm.
volume to actually get people into the homes they need, right? All we're doing is creating this pent up demand for more houses that we just can't seem to work through the system. So it's not great. It's not great for our business, perhaps, but it's also just not great for our country, our general real estate markets. We need to move through some of that volume to get people into some houses, to allow them to be able to move up, to support the immigrants that are coming to the country. All of that is going to continue to create a lot of problems as we go through the next, let's say, 5, even 10 years.
Is immigration a problem then? And I know that's a loaded question, and I don't say
Yeah.
that to bring a negative tone on,
Yep.
closing
Immig-
doors. It's not that comment. It's more,
yeah.
is that
Sure.
causing is that the big kind of factor behind it? There's just too many people coming through?
I think that it's compounding the other factors, right? So even if you strip out immigration, like let's look at during COVID, right? When we
Right.
didn't really see
Right.
the,
Yeah.
the, the gates open, so to speak, we still saw that there were way more people out there that wanted homes than we had homes.
Mhm.
We are not building nearly enough. So the building of the homes is really the problem. The immigration is compounding it. Immigration is not a problem. It's great for our labor market. We desperately need newcomers to fill
Mhm.
many, many
Mhm.
positions across the country. We are struggling with the infrastructure to support new people coming in, particularly in Toronto, Montreal, Vancouver.
Yeah, like, I mean, we look at this issue, and we'll talk to, supply and affordability in just a second here. We talk to
Yeah,
this, and we look at the lack of supply. Is this just, "Hey, maybe we close the doors for a little bit?" You do bring up a great point. We
yeah,
still had this
yeah,
issue during COVID, and I think that
yeah,
to the other point you made just a few minutes ago, it's not a good or a bad market. I mean, and again, somebody else said this to me recently, like, it's a professionals market. If you
yeah,
understand how to run a
absolutely.
business, you're gonna find your opportunity, you're gonna be able to survive,
Agree
you
with
know?
that. I don't think you could close the door on immigration. If you close the door on immigration, you're going to create Japan. If you look at what's happening in Japan right now, people are walking away from their homes because there's not enough people living there to support the homes that are available, right? And
Okay.
Canadians are not having enough babies, right? We are
Right.
not supporting our own growth in this country. So the only way to ensure that we've got enough people to support all the businesses that we have, all the growth, our GDP, all of that is to bring people in. So I don't think you can close the door, but I think we have to grapple with how do you support them? How do you catch up on infrastructure, right? We seem to be falling down there all over the place, right? Healthcare,
Mhm.
transportation. It's just something that we're not putting enough focus on, and they're hard questions, right? These are not easy things to
No.
answer. I mean, if you look at the Toronto mayoral race right now, there's lots of ideas out there. None of them are easily executable. None of them.
That's a scary race right now. That is a very scary
It's,
race right now.
it's yes, it is.
But interestingly enough, and I think that the topic around infrastructure, and we topic about um, logistics, let's say the transportation, healthcare, the issues we're seeing out there. And this is completely a personal opinionated belief here, but I
Mhm.
believe that COVID brought this on. And I guess to illustrate that or maybe kind of describe that, it's almost I feel like the mindset's changed drastically around how we serving people. Um, we look at some of the biggest companies out there now, and when you call, I look, called Aeroplan the other day, and it tells you right away we're punch in all this stuff in 15 minutes after you've sort of worked your way and navigated your way through this automated system. It tells you we're experiencing a higher volume of calls than normal, and blah blah blah. If you'd like us to call you back, or like it's longer wait times, or maybe calls back in like 2 days, and you're like, how long
Yeah,
is this going to take? It took me 15 minutes just to punch the information in. I think we've missed the mark on the service part of things. Now, just to keep the flow of like why I'm bringing that part up is that
hmm
that then said, well, the disconnection between one person to another person has changed. COVID came, we had this distancing, call it social distancing, but I also believe that it created a disconnect between people.
hmm
Um, there was things that obviously a lot of people either do or don't agree on, but I'm not going down that road today. What I'm saying is that it changed mentalities around how we work together, how we operate together, maybe the due care that we put into things. And so we look back at the healthcare as well as the transportation industries. To me, again, I think that the service part of some of this stuff has taken a
yeah,
hit and therefore might be an issue. Now, obviously, there's deeper rooted issues around like infrastructure, logistics, bringing new
yeah,
people in, different conversations. But I guess the point I'm making, Karen, is I think the service part of it is lacked, and I think that that's really
yeah.
changed the way we operate with each other, and therefore what we do for each other.
Yeah, there's a big opportunity there, right? If you can nail service when other people are not, you're going to have a big advantage. Some of the other problems is that there's just simply not enough staff. People retrained, right? People
Right.
had 2 years to figure out what they wanted to do when jobs disappeared. I mean, if you go into any airport right now across the country, and everyone working in security is new almost. They're all new because all of those people had to find new jobs during COVID, right? I think we broke our supply chains, and part of the supply chain was the employee part of the supply chain. We talk a lot about the actual goods, right? Oh, we couldn't get anything during COVID. We broke the people part, and that's way harder to get back, right? There's training, there's actually finding the talent, there's pressure on wages, there's all sorts of things that are creating a bigger obstacle around the people than anything else.
I agree with you 1,000,000%. That's it. That was where I'm going down with it. Like something
Yeah,
broke, and I think that
yeah,
getting that back might actually help solve the other issues we're having. But let's now go right back to the other side of the diamond over here
yeah,
and go to, we talked about the summer market starting to see possibly some good hype to it, which is a great thing. It's a very positive outlook for everybody. And so everybody tune in, get excited about that. I do want to ask though,
yeah,
when it comes to the inflation numbers, when it comes to the interest rates, I know that we kind of heard, we're not going to see things rise. And then economists came out, what feels like yesterday was probably a couple of weeks ago now, and said, well, it's possible we will see things rise. Um,
yeah.
We seem to be in crazy times. Can the market sustain a rate increase, or will this force us the other way?
Right. I think that anytime you have a rate increase, you're going to see activity dampen. It's very difficult for people to have confidence in the market when the rates are going up. And we've also become very accustomed in Canada to house prices rise. So when interest rates go up, house prices lower. We saw that, right? When interest rates
Mhm.
rose. Uh, if people see rates rise, they think, oh, well, house prices are going to lower. I got to wait. So even if they have confidence in housing overall, even if they need a house, generally want to be in the market, that is an indication to them to wait for a lower price in a world where we're trained to think that real estate always goes up. Who isn't
Right.
going to wait for the deal, right? And that's what we saw. We saw all of these buyers sideline themselves when interest rates started to rise, and when
Mhm.
they held, we saw them come back, right? It's very predictable. The interesting thing that we didn't see was the degree of prices decreasing during those rate increases. We should have seen prices go down more. We didn't because there weren't enough houses on the market. Sellers were able to hold their cards a little tighter. They were, simply say, we're not going to participate until prices go back up, or there just simply weren't enough sellers coming to the table for the buyers that wanted in. So typically you would have seen the prices decrease more than we saw. And I think that's why we're seeing them go up so drastically so far this year.
So we're suggesting then that if it does go up, it probably will be a negative impact on the market once again.
I think you'll see another dip in prices
Yeah.
like we saw. Like the crash that people are waiting for is not coming.
I
Not
don't think
this
so.
time around, at least. This
No.
time around, it's not coming. Never say never, right? But not for this cycle.
Okay, but never say never. Like, I mean, look, I don't dig into the numbers the way you do. Okay, so I don't study the numbers the way you do it. I'm looking at like pure, just blunt logic, my own logic. Remember when gas prices went up above $1? Like I'm talking way back when, and we all sat there going, "Oh my god, there is no way this lasts." Never ever drop back below $1, right?
Never.
Like ever. When we
Yeah.
saw it go up,
Except during COVID.
well, there's the thing about when we saw it go up, and all of a sudden it went up,
Yeah.
up to like that almost $2. You're like, wow. Now at
Yeah.
$1.50, you feel like you're getting a deal. I don't know that we
People
see house
adjust.
people adjust. We saw back in what the late 80s, early 90s when interest rates were in double digits. We are nowhere close to that.
Yeah.
That started to hit the market by hundreds of thousands of
Yeah.
dollars. We
Yeah.
might see the higher priced homes experience larger dips just because, again, larger money, just everything seems pretty
Mhm.
relative. But I'm with you. I don't know that things get hit. Now, I will say, and I'd love your opinion on this one. I do look at the choices that a lot of people made um, leading up to and probably during COVID to go and purchase a home in a
Mhm.
crazy market for well over asking. And the question I've asked many economists, I've asked Mr. Soper's been on this show. I mean, I've asked some phenomenal people that really have their ear to the ground on this stuff, and I've had a mixed bag of answers on it.
Mhm.
So I'm curious to yours. I mean, the question really comes down to, I mean, if somebody is going to purchase a home and they were qualified for X, but they realize that they got to spend Y, now all of a sudden they go find Y money. Now
Mhm.
we're renewal time 3 to 5 years later. Interest rate went up, monthly payment went up. The question I used to be asking was, where are people getting all the money? But the question that I want to
Mhm.
spin to now and get your opinion on is, what are we seeing about the outlook there in terms of when
Yeah.
renewal time comes up for a lot of the folks that overextended themselves? Does that start to really impact the inventory we have? The prices of that
Mhm.
inventory? Is that an opportune moment for people? Do we see most people figuring out a way to sustain through that?
Yeah. Well, it's funny, right? Because everyone waits for this, right? We're so funny. You go on Twitter or you read anything out there about real estate, and people are just dying for this crash, right? Everyone wants
Yeah.
houses to come onto the market because people lost them, which is a really terrible thing to think about, right? That's someone's shelter. I don't think so for a few reasons. One, there's some articles lately about, oh, we're going to see some more defaults. Yes, likely, right? We probably will see some more defaults. If defaults tripled in Canada, they would still be under 1% of all mortgages. It is such
Okay.
a low rate of default current situation. And even if it were to triple, it would still be under 1% of mortgages. So people really need to think about that in context. If you're waiting for 1% of market to come back on supply because it's someone lost their home, I think you're going to be waiting forever. I don't think that's a great strategy for getting into the market.
Okay, but tell me this:
People,
what the 1% though? Sorry to cut you off there. The 1%.
yeah,
I'm just
okay.
curious. What's the number? Where does that come from? Is that just like an
Well,
average that we've seen over the past 5, 10,
the
25 years
the
kind of thing?
current rate of defaults in Canada is under 0.25%.
What period do we do that on though? Like when we say that, is that just current moment?
No, it's tracked annually. Like you can go way back and look at it,
Okay,
right? So if you look,
got you.
so
So this is
yeah,
like historical. Got
yes,
you. Thank you.
absolutely. And if you
Got
look,
it.
so if you look at 2008 as an example, right, where you saw the US had defaults go like this, our defaults were just like this, right? Like nothing really happened. So Canadians are great at paying their mortgage. And interesting, we've seen during this cycle in particular, lenders really play ball, right? Lenders are not trying to get people out of their home. Lenders don't want to own homes.
Right.
The absolute last thing they want to do is own a home for a variety of reasons.
Mhm.
So they're extending the term, right? They're allowing people to back in some of that interest. They're working with their clientele. So I have no reason to believe that in 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, whenever that mortgage is up, one, I don't think they'll be underwater on it. I think that house prices will appreciate enough. We've already seen 10% increase in the GTA since the beginning of the calendar year. So I don't think they'll be underwater. And I think lenders will work with their clients to keep them in their homes, which is good for everybody. So I don't see that as an opportunity, and I don't see that happening. It will likely go up a bit, but not to the point where anyone will notice. We're not going to see 2008 US, foreclosure power of sale, streets emptying out. That's not in the foreseeable future for Canada.
Well, look, I like the positive outlook, but I do like the way you support it as well. It's not just coming out of nowhere. There's obviously some support to that, and hence that's why for me it was is that historical because again
Yeah,
I think that that's what really boggled my mind is that we look at a
yeah,
lot of the folks that are working hard, that are out there doing what they're what they should be doing to earn a living, as opposed to just flying by the seat of their pants or not really working for it. But the ones who are, they should be able to afford a home. They should be able to afford that mortgage without getting to the point where they're completely overextended or going into debt. And I think that again, then look, that rolls us right into this whole question about supply and
yeah,
everything back. So,
yeah,
maybe I'll just take us down there for a moment
yeah.
or sort of take us down
Hmm.
that road now. But we talk about a lack of supply. Um, I was just sharing with you before we got on air about the MindShare Mastermind, how we just wrapped that up in Toronto. And we spent 2 days downtown in the city. Now, we were downtown, like heart of
Hmm.
Toronto, okay?
Yeah,
But we went out on the Monday evening to an event and we had to get in a car to get there. Karen, I can't tell you how many tall cranes I see everywhere. Like I'm
oh,
seeing tall
absolutely.
crane, and I know some of this can be, commercial stuff or whatnot, but I want to kind of believe a lot of
Yeah,
this is a condo building. A lot of this
it
is
is.
is that. And so I'm looking
Yeah,
around. I'm everywhere you turn. There's construction. There's infrastructure being built. There's buildings going up. And I mean, I was on Blue Jays Way at the hotel we stayed, and I looked, and somebody said like that used to be Wayne Gretzky's. I'm like, no, it didn't. I'm like, oh my God, it
yeah,
did. Look at all these buildings. I used to
yeah,
walk. My dad used to park his car there when we went to the Jays
yeah,
games. I can't recognize it.
yeah.
Do we really have a supply issue? Like,
So
seriously,
first of
I
all,
know.
first of all, we're getting old, what you've established here, because
Oh my
I was
God, are we?
walking down Portland Street, and Portland Street never used to look like Portland Street does now, and it's all cranes, and I felt very old. Aside from that, we do have a supply issue. I think that those condos in the air, always remember they've already been purchased, right? You can't put a crane up in Canada without that unit being purchased, right? That's not how the financing works in new construction. You have to sell it to build it. Right? US, they build on spec, right? It's very different. And they've fallen down on that a few times, right? Here, it's got to be a sure thing. So that's already occupied space. That's 4, 5, some projects 6, right? Years out from having the person in. Now, that person, 5 years from now, they might keep it as an investment property. They might live in it. They might flip it. Who knows, right? It might come back on in terms of stock, in terms of rental or a resale, but it is accounted for. So we absolutely do have a supply issue. The prices dictate that. Those condos are not cheap, right? Not cheap for
Wow.
first
Yeah,
time buyers. I think that's that is a real problem for
it
us
is.
as a society, for a country. It is the potential for that to be one of our biggest downfalls, that we can't support young people who want to build their lives here. I think with work from home, we've given people a new chance at this. And there's so much tug of war about work from home, right? You all these articles, particularly by people that own these big buildings and REITs, come back to work, come back to work. And it is good for culture, right? In person is great. This is an in person business. We're in, right? We love in person. But I think it's going to be a decision between being able to have a life that you want for you and your family, somewhere where you can afford and not feel that you're hostage to your mortgage, versus working in person in a vibrant city, right? I think we're going to see our secondary cities have a real up and coming period of time in the next 10 years in Canada. They won't look like they look today. They'll be viable options for young people. And it's going to shift, right? It's going to shift Toronto, Vancouver to cities of old people. Because they're the people that own the houses. And then the young people will be in secondary markets, right? They're going to be in Winnipeg. They're going to be in Calgary. They'll be in smaller places in Ontario and British Columbia. It's going to look different, I think.
You have to for the affordability. I mean, look, you're bang on, and we all know it. They're building shoe boxes with washrooms, and some of them have a balcony, right? And it's you cannot raise a family there. And from an affordability perspective, that makes it difficult. And this goes right back to the affordability question I was posing before, and what circles through my mind is I think to myself, again, from what the impact that those past few years had, a lot of people working from homes, and I know very well as well. These tall buildings, they're all let's go, get back in, let's go, get back to work. And you're bang on. Culture, 1,000,000%, it's amazing. However, the mindset shift said, I'm going to work from home. And what fears me is that those individuals that decide they're going to work from home or have made that decision, whether they go into entrepreneurship or they're working for a company, a business, but they're doing it from home. I'm just hoping everybody's got the drive to continue to push forward to actually go out and make that living so they can go and ultimately achieve what they want. The fear becomes that if they're at home and they're not forced into the office, they're not building the culture, it allows for a completely different lifestyle, maybe different habits around the way you operate, and maybe you don't have that success you ultimately want, and now you're almost either stuck in this shoebox or the shoebox becomes unaffordable. The
I
other
agree. Self
concern I got,
motivation is hard, right?
well,
It's
that's the
hard to be
thing,
self motivated, and
right?
to always be self motivated in your home. You've got to think at a certain point that there's a crossroads between innovation and productivity, and that.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, we talked. One of the sessions we did at our mastermind was on exactly that was innovation, your intangibles. What are those things that you need to put forward? Because it's that if they're not motivated, that's my fear. The other one is I was walking through Yorkdale the other day, bumped into a colleague who owns an office in sort of the central core of the city, and mentioned to me that his parents who live in this 3,500 square foot home have like they want to downsize, but they got zero desire to go into one of these condos to pay even more money than what they're already owning for. There's
Right.
no reason to downsize at this point because financially it doesn't make sense.
That's why we have inventory that's trapped, right? That's the trap of the inventory. If things aren't making sense for people to take that next step, whatever it is, and we're breaking that cycle of home ownership, right? So homes are supposed to turn over, and it's
Hmm.
getting longer, right? It's getting longer.
Yeah.
People stay in their homes much longer. If it was 5 years and then 7 years, and it's people now pick one home and they live in there forever, right? Because it's very hard to make that next step, and it's problematic, right? It's hard to get on the ladder.
If you're looking at the math, it doesn't make sense right now to try to make the next, like, depending on your situation, of course.
Yeah. Yeah.
But let me ask you this then: what do you think, or maybe discussions that you've been involved in, we need to do to increase supply?
We need to reimagine our neighborhoods, right? We have to stop with the only single family residential outside of the downtown core, right? And we're starting slowly, right? Strong mayor powers, we're cutting red tape, right? We
Hmm.
could put a fourplex now on a bungalow lot. Everyone goes crazy. I
Hmm.
can't believe this is
Hmm.
going to be a fourplex. But I think it needs to look like that for it to make sense. We don't have the culture of living in apartment buildings in Canada. We have too much space for that. So it's going to come down to different housing types and tighter housing types on infill sites, right? And it's very hard to build supply through infill. So that can't be our only solution.
Right.
We need better infrastructure to connect people from farther communities into major centers, right? That is lackluster at best. You can barely get a GO train going to Barrie.
Right.
That has to stop, right? If people are going to live there and those surrounding areas, you have to be able to bring them in. Uh, Otherwise, everything else starts falling apart, like we're seeing with people clogging the roads and people saying, well, I have to work from home because I live too far away. And it's hurting downtown businesses. It's hurting our bigger corporations because people are making the choices that they have to sort of keep their sanity.
It's an interesting point. We were at our event yesterday, and as we wrapped up, I decided to go to the Jays game with one of the folks that was there with me at the event.
Mhm.
Well, my wife, who was down there in the same car that I went down in, was going home.
Yeah,
How am I
yeah,
getting home? So my team went and tried to figure out the ghost
yep,
schedule, and I not for anything. I typically drive and I do stick in that traffic as opposed to take the
yep,
go. So that's a little bit like a, all right, I know I got to go to Union, but what I got to do. So they started looking into this
yep,
to me and they came up to me and they said, Dave, there's no go
nothing.
train going up there.
Yep,
And they
yep,
just built a massive go station just sort of up in my neighborhood, massive over the
yep,
past few. This thing is huge. Not a single train or bus going up there.
yep.
So
It sounds about right.
that's the infrastructure conversation is interesting. I mean, I guess it doesn't solve. Well,
It helps,
that's
but
an
you got to
interesting
put something
spin,
first.
Karen. I like that because you're saying build more out there because we can use the land we can do, but you got
Yeah.
to be able to get people in town.
You can't support 500,000 people per year coming in, essentially all of them to Toronto at the beginning through infill projects
A
and little
three-lane
condos
404,
in
right?
the sky, right? You cannot, right? We have to find ways to connect people in to the city, the sort of hub and spoke model, and we don't do a good job of it at all, right? We never really have, right?
Mhm.
Toronto is I've lived there my entire life. Toronto has struggled to grow up, right? It has an identity crisis. It never knows exactly who it is, tries to play like New York, falls down a little bit on that. It's had an identity crisis for quite some time, and I think it's coming to a head.
I would like to someone to fix the 404 issue because we're still in a three-lane highway that's like
Yeah,
major artery in the city, but I
yeah.
digress on that.
Also, it'd be
Uh,
great if they could do that in less than 2 years, right? I mean, I
well,
didn't want to see the 400 be, renovated, adds a couple lanes to it for over 2 years. Like, are they ever going to be done? It's just a lane.
I'm sure
Can
nobody
you
wants
not
to
get
talk
this
about
done?
nobody wants to talk about the LRT going through Eglinton, right? So
Didn't
here,
they say that the Coliseum was built faster than that? I thought, oh, that's
that's
perfect.
exactly, because I was down there the other day and I know that neighborhood, right? I used to go to school down there for a few years and going through along Eglinton from Don Mills to Bayview
Yeah,
down to one lane.
right where my office is. Yes,
Oh my.
I
Anyhow,
know. I
lack
know.
of lack of supply, private industry. Do we really have any type of control over this? I mean, builders will build if they want to build. They won't build if they don't want to build.
You, we have to stop vilifying supply, right? We do it with investors for rental properties. We
Right.
do it with these big bad builders that we think are terrible people. They are the people that are going to solve this problem, but they are not going to do it for charity, right? They are here to make money, like all of us. So we have to incent them to do it, right? You can't force them to do it, but you can financially
That
incent
that
them
was
to
my
do it.
point.
And
Private
that's
industry,
what's
you
missing.
can't. Right.
Yes, you can, but they will. People are smart, right? People will do what makes sense for them and their businesses. What we're hearing loud and clear, we saw when the interest rates started to rise, was that it wasn't making sense, right? It's too much uncertainty. We know there's a tremendous amount of red tape, right? We hear that all the time. We know that, development charges are sky high. We don't always see the output of those development charges, which is even more frustrating. So we have to provide real incentives. Private industry can get us there. If we wait for the government, I think we're going to be waiting quite some time, right? If we incent private industry to do it, they will do it faster. We just
But
need to get our heads around
they
that,
got
right?
right, because look, they can make the money off of it. It's a big brass tacks. They can make money as long as if we can help them
Yeah,
get there faster, they will go and do. We
they
can't
will do
force
it.
we can't force them.
No,
We can't point the finger at them because how could you turn to builder ABC versus XY or either of them and just say, "Hey, you're not working hard enough.
no.
I don't work
There,
for you."
to be clear, right? There's no builder in this country who doesn't want to make an abundance of
Right?
money, right? There's none. So what is the problem, right? Some of it might be labor, right? It's hard,
Yeah.
it's very
Right.
expensive, right?
Yeah.
All of their cost bases have gone crazy, right? So I get they have some of their own internal struggles, like all of
Sure.
our, various industries have, but they want to make money. They will make money if there's a way to make money. If there's not, they're going to do something else.
So what about affordability? I mean, again, it's just they go hand in hand, obviously. We've already talked about this a bunch. Do we believe that the affordability and the increased supply, do those two go hand in hand with one another?
They should, right? They should. Theoretically, if you have enough supply for your people, there will be less pressure on prices. Now, you might not see that in the heart of our cities and there's certain areas that I think are almost just immune to
Right.
price sensitivity, right? You look at downtown Toronto, perhaps you look at, downtown Oakville. Like there's just certain areas that people, and there's a lot of that is, single family home still. Those
Mhm.
mature areas are a bit more immune to this. But overall, particularly in what you call the sort of the starter home centers, right? The type of home that's a starter home. I think there we can do something to help this. It's not going to be perfect, right? Like I don't think you're going to see prices at 50% of what they were, right? That's not realistic. But certainly if there's more of it, we should be giving our first time buyers a leg up to get in. Different types
You
of
know,
homes aren't a bad idea either, right? Like smaller homes. Like why do we have to always build, especially out in the exurbs? Like why do we have to build such big homes, right? First time buyer doesn't need a 5,000 square foot home.
no. No. Look, if I look at our neighborhood, I'm not living downtown Toronto. I'm north of the core. And I look at what we bought our home for, what our home is valued at right now, if we were to sell, what we could sell it for, etc. But then you look at to go where. And this comes back to that same
Sure.
conversation around
Yeah.
why would I downsize when my house is worth, or like I didn't spend as much as I'd have to buy it for basically
Yeah.
right now. And I look at the same thing. To get into more space, the amount of money that needs to be spent to
Yeah.
get into that space does not make sense. It doesn't fit with incomes and whatnot. And I'm not just putting that on me. I'm saying anybody that is out there that again has a single detached home, has been in the workforce for 10 to 20 years, has a family that's, I wouldn't even say, if we said young, not babies, but kids that are in grade
Yeah.
school, elementary schools.
Hmm.
This demographic of people should have the ability to move up. And at this
Agreed.
point right now, affordability is not there to do so. And I don't know that I don't know if increased supply solves that or not, but I could tell you for sure, at least in my own shoes, I'm not looking to downsize at this point in my life.
Yeah.
It's
I I don't think it's not perfect, right? It's not like you build enough homes and all of a sudden it's the magic bullet and things are very affordable, right? I think people are also used to elevated prices, so that would take a long time to work through the system. Where people say, "I want it to be worth X." Like you see that as soon as the market starts to change a little bit, sellers are stubborn, right? They want the same value that they saw. That value they saw on paper has
right.
infiltrated their brain, right?
Yeah.
And they want it. Uh, that said, if you have more, it should be the case that it becomes more affordable, right? They're supposed to be stepping stones in housing, and we have lost a lot of that. I think again, depending on the market, right? There's markets in Canada where that's not the case, right? That you can get yourself a great single family home. It's expensive, but it's not going to break you in terms of your finances, but it's a choice, right? You're not living in Toronto, you're not living in Vancouver. They're different markets, right? And I do think we're going to see more people exploring those markets, one out of necessity. But look at Hamilton as an example, right?
Mhm.
Hamilton became a place to move out of necessity, and it turned into quite a vibrant place to live. A lot of young people living in Hamilton, right?
Mhm.
A lot more culture, a lot more bars, nightlife, things to do. So it's possible, right? You can create communities that have what you want, but you got to bring the people in together. Someone has to start it, right? And I think we're going to see more of that.
When we look at well, as we just talked about, getting older and seeing what the landscape downtown looks like versus what it was
Yeah,
at a time, there's just your growth.
yeah,
That's how the world evolves. So at some
that's
point,
right.
people are going to push further out. I'm with you. I find it difficult to move any further out of where I am just based on, again, the circles I run in, the
Got to
things I
do. Yeah,
do, and everything else. And this is where we
yeah,
are,
yeah.
right? But
If you had a high-speed train to get there, would you think differently? If there was a train that was reliable that could get you there in like 45 minutes, would you feel differently?
potentially,
Yeah,
potentially,
I
I'll
think a
tell you,
lot of people would, right?
I almost moved up to my dream home,
Okay,
which is the backyard is still on my vision board, but the backyard was on my vision board before we saw the house.
okay,
Almost moved up there. It was up in Barrie.
okay.
Just couldn't hack the extra 45
Yeah,
minutes to get down to my
yeah,
neighborhood to where I am,
yes,
and then still the 45 to an
yeah,
hour to get down to the city, depending on traffic.
yeah, yeah,
The circles were different. Everything was different. The 400 in the wintertime, whatever you call it. Beautiful
yes,
area, beautiful neighborhood. It
yeah.
is gorgeous up there.
It is.
it was the distance. So now if you say, well,
Yeah.
hey, I can cut your ride in half because of this train,
Yeah.
maybe.
Yeah. So what
Personally,
people
I'm not the
maybe,
train
right?
guy, and it's more just maybe because again, I
Yeah.
grew up in the city, so I'm used to driving as opposed to. But I mean, I know some people
Yeah.
who every time we want to go down to the game, they're like, okay, man, meet me at the GO station. I'm like, where do you do that?
Right.
I'm gonna go on the train to the wrong way by accident.
See, and the ironic thing is that a lot of city folk, right? We've done research on this. Like more people than you realize own secondary properties, right? So a lot of city people buy that dream home, but only use it on the weekends because that's
Right.
when it makes sense for them, right? So they
Yeah.
drive up the 400 on Friday evening and they enjoy their weekend with peace and quiet and space and all that great stuff, and then they come back down to the race, right? I think you open up a lot of possibilities. Look during COVID, right? How many people went up there and stuck around? I lost the sound again.
How's that?
Better.
Perfect.
At
Good.
least it's not me. I feel better.
Telling you, it doesn't make sense that we've got a hardwired connection. Like we had this issue and we were like, they're like, you should hardwire. We're like, yeah, we run wireless and like hundreds of episodes, no issue. Now, all of a sudden, recently we're having issues. I'm like, forget it. Let's go hardwire this thing. So we hardwired.
Funny.
I don't
Yeah,
get it.
I don't
Anyhow,
either.
thank you
It's
for
all
your
good.
patience.
No problem.
So here, I'm going to switch gears for us because
Okay.
I definitely don't want to lose the opportunity to have this conversation as well. But you just because it's like up my alley now.
Sure.
So we did like a whole bunch of you. Now we're going to do some of me. No I'm joking.
Okay.
But you've got a background in sales and marketing. That is my world. That is the sandbox I play in. I am with you. I absolutely love this industry. These are my people. Um, First and foremost, and you actually answered this or stated this earlier on, but is real estate an online tech business or is it a relationship business?
No. I think it's primarily a relationship business that's supported by tech, right? Everyone's going nuts right now. AI, what's it's going to do to
Mhm.
the industry, right? I, I am a firm believer that people like things that feel good, right? Like we're all human, and
Mhm. Mhm.
that if something feels good, you're more likely to do it. And keep in mind, I am a lawyer by trade, right? I did a lot of real
Mhm.
estate law, so I'm very well aware of the parts of this process in the home buying journey that people like and the parts that they have zero interest in. Okay, the closing, hint, hint, is the part that they couldn't care less about. They just want the keys and they want
Right.
to get into
Right.
the house.
Right. Like, okay, I'm
So
done. Thank you.
yeah, like just give me what I need here, right? Do I have to actually come in and see you? It's right now you don't, right? So the part that people love is envisioning their life, right? They want to stand in the
Yeah.
home and they want to picture the paint on the walls and they want to picture the baby's crib in the room. And no one's going to take that away from people. So physically going to see a house, like there's a lot of talk about how people will just buy houses online. They will narrow things down like they do now online. I think people won't want to lose that feeling because that feeling doesn't happen that often in your life. How many houses are you buying for yourself personally with
Right.
emotion?
Yeah.
So for that reason, I think that it's still an in-person business. There's a huge trust factor. It is the biggest purchase generally people make
Mhm.
in their life. So they want someone that they feel they can trust. You can build trust online, but you want to confirm that often in person. So I'm a big fan of in person. I often say that young people that we are, they're like this, right? That might change it, right? Because it's always like this, right? Like my daughter's 10 and she does this all the time.
Right.
So in 15 years, maybe it'll just be this. But if you're good at things outside of this, I think you're going to be killer down the road. I think that that's going to be a huge ticket to success because that will still matter and people will feel differently if you can engage with them in person with being genuine and build that trust. So I love technology, but I don't think it's not the demise of our industry. That's for sure.
Well, and that's it's a fresh perspective. And I don't believe that people, I okay. The way I look at it is when we see the technology, and I loved the word used about support. This to me is huge because when we talk about marketing, well, okay, that's great. You did that. Now, how are you supporting it? Um, Send out a flyer, go do a door knock. have somebody meet you through Instagram, figure out how to take it offline and make a connection, or vice versa. Hey, I met you in person. Great. Are you on Insta? Yeah, let's connect. Let's be
Yeah.
friends. So I believe
Yeah.
that that's an important factor. And I'm with you. Obviously, the kids and everybody growing up these days. I mean, again, being downtown, it's incredible. You're like literally bobbing and weaving people who
Mhm.
are just not looking and they're
Yeah.
just
Not
walking
looking.
straight and like not looking. Um, it's pretty wild, you know.
Yeah.
And then with this introduction of AI, which you brought up here, what is your take on this? Is this a good thing for the industry? We've got a lot more access to maybe tools that I believe people can use the wrong ways that will actually take away from the trust factor
Yeah.
if used
We already have
incorrectly.
tools. We already have tools that people use the wrong way and they hurt. They hurt the
Fair,
industry.
like
They
that.
hurt
Yep.
they hurt the professionals in the market. You raise the professionals market.
Hmm.
We love the professionals market. That is who we serve. We want to serve professionals in this industry.
Hmm.
So I think that that's already there. It's just here we have another use case now, right? Of someone
Yeah,
who's
yeah,
going to take
yeah.
a tool and potentially use it the wrong way. Um, there's some art to those tools. Like we've tried these
Absolutely.
tools, right? We've
Yep.
all gone on there.
Yep.
If you don't prompt ChatGPT correctly, you're going to get something that's not as good. If you could figure out how to prompt it, it's better. And usually, what people say when they do chat, which is just a very basic example, is, "Yeah, I tweaked it after it came out."
Right.
So if you're just blindly trusting what's coming out, it's garbage in, garbage out. It's
Yeah.
not going to be that much different. It is good for time savings. If you think about this industry, right? And
Yes.
margin compression is real, right? And realtors are doing more for perhaps the same amount of money, but often a little bit less, right? We all feel that squeeze. Um, this is good for that, right? Efficiency tools are great for business. So if you see it as an efficiency tool, I think you're on the right track, right? If you see it as something that can do your job for you, probably not. And if you see it as something that's going to replace your job, I think that's unrealistic too.
Well, I'd say from an efficiency perspective, yeah, absolutely. I think it certainly helps. I think from a credibility perspective, if you do use it the wrong way and you allow it to speak for you and you allow it to do your job, you're going to miss the mark when you have an in-person conversation with somebody who's going to ask you and say, "Well, hey, tell me more about that thing," and you're like, "Ooh, I don't
Yeah, what
really
thing?
actually know about that thing, and I know I
Yeah,
told you about it, but I don't know about it." That for me is where my caution line is for everybody.
yeah,
I
I
think
agree with that.
these and look, ChatGPT is one of the AI platforms available these days. I mean, there's a number of different platforms exactly like it. There's some that will cut up video for you, cut up podcast for. I mean,
Yep,
there's everything. The world is going that way still, and it's not just going to stop. So embracing it and understanding how to implement it and integrate it, huge. Why not? Because there's a lot of great things we can do with it. My caution to the
absolutely.
industry is always just don't let it do the speaking for you.
Yes,
Instead, leverage it to help you with the research side of what you're trying to do. Google will give you a whole bunch of results and you got to go dig.
yeah.
ChatGPT, if you ask it the right question, it'll just give you what you want, right?
Exactly. But you're right. You have to read it, understand it, question it. I mean,
Mm,
we're big on serving realtors with information that they can then absorb and use, right? Like we're all about shareables and data and market updates and surveys and all that wonderful stuff. Why? Because it's all educational material that's
mhm,
easily absorbable, then you can share with your clients and be a subject matter expert. So I, if it takes away that piece where it comes out from a system or a service provider, and it doesn't allow you to be a subject matter expert, it allows you to sort of be a robot, that's no good, right?
right.
We should all want to be subject matter experts in this industry. That is how you are a professional in a professional's market. It's how you build trust with clients. Clients are smart, right? They're going online, they're reading, right? There's real estate. I say it's our national pastime, like hockey's over, right? We're into real estate now as Canadians. So people are educated out there,
Hey,
right?
we
If you
still
have to
got
stay
the
one
Blue
step ahead.
Jays. We still got the.
Oh,
Hey,
thank
last night they
God for the
won.
Blue Jays.
Last night they won. And I got to tell you, have you been to the new Skydome yet? Like to the new, have you been
Not
there?
yet, no, and I'm
I
excited
just went for
because
the first time yesterday.
yeah, was it great?
Karen, if you've been going there since
I have,
years ago, since
I
this place
have,
opened, which
yeah.
I have as well, it was so cool. Like
Okay,
we
excellent. This
did,
is a good plan.
we had front row seats, right? Like Vladdy was right here. We sat in there for an inning and we went and walked the entire place. We saw every single new spot. We just spent some
Awesome.
time just hanging there. Okay, we watched from here for an inning. Let's go watch from there for an inning. It was very,
Perfect.
very cool, exciting. Definitely get there.
I
Definitely
like
get
that you
there.
can watch from somewhere else because we were always so bad at that. It was sit in your seats, right? Some
Right.
US stadiums do a really good job of like viewing decks
Yep.
and fun social places to watch a game because baseball's a little slow. So it's nice to have something to break it up.
You just nailed it. Like the decks and the different like social spots. Like there were
Yeah,
spots there where you go up to, and if you're not right on the rail, people are hanging out in Muskoka chairs. Like there
that's
was one
awesome.
I walked by, I'm like, they need a campfire right there. Like this is
That's
cool.
good.
There's another spot there was like live band going on. It
Very
was
cool.
really awesome. And again, you understanding the whole lay of the place. Like we sat in our seats, even Vladdy's there, but if I want to see home plate, I got to be doing this. And I could hear the
Yeah.
dad behind me with his little boy being like, "Hey, buddy, can you see? Do you want to move sheets?" And I'm like, "Oh, I'm that guy with my son. I don't want to be that guy to this kid, right? Like, I want to keep moving."
Right. Oh
Um,
man.
but here, coming back. So we talk about AI, talk about sales and marketing. It's a people business. Leverage the tech for sure, though. There's
Hmm.
and I would never sit here and say don't leverage the technology. That being said, I would just back that up and say I truly, wholeheartedly believe it's a people business,
Yeah.
and if we do the right things and play the technology the right way, it will always remain a people business. So this now comes back to something that you said right off the top of the show, and I said, I'll get there.
Yeah.
How do we remain relevant in the face of all of this?
For realtors, I think it's all about the client care, right? I mean, what are we seeing from technology? What do you see from a Zillow as an example, right? You're seeing self-serve. Self-serve is okay. Like we all do some self-serve in our life, right? You go
Mhm.
to the grocery store and now you're doing all the work yourself, and you kind of get a little bit mad at Loblaws for making you do that, and you move along. But houses are groceries, right? Like a house is more important than your groceries, and people like to be served, right? Look at the service industry overall, right? We talked a little bit about how it's
Yep.
so impactful when service isn't there. Like how mad are you at Aeroplan, right? That you can't get through to
No,
talk
no,
to
no
that
joke.
person,
Like I feel a service
right?
dropped off the face of this earth with
Yeah.
like everything.
Yeah. And we love service. We
We
love
do.
service
We
as
do.
human beings. We all like to be taken care of, right? So if you can serve your client, and I think realtors have done an incredible job in this category when you look at client care and client concierge, and it's not just I'll sell your house now, right? It's they are prepping everything for market. Things are beautifully staged. Like I think that Toronto and our other major centers do real estate so well. It's so sophisticated in the way that we operate, and I think that's very hard to replace, right? An interesting thing I heard one time is it's very easy if you do one thing well. It's really easy for a competitor to come along and beat you by just doing that
Mhm.
one thing a
Mhm.
little bit better. If you do 1,000 things well, competitor's done. Can't figure it out, right? Can't crack your 1,000 things. And I think realtors are really good at covering that from start to finish, the 1,000 things that need to be done really well. So that's how you stay relevant, right? You keep upping that bar in terms of the client care, service. People love service.
It's one of those where and you like you nailed it. I'm so with you on that with the customer service and that approach to things because we talk about the importance of communication. We talk about the importance of making people feel. You said it a minute ago when you said like when it comes to closing time, I just want like give me my keys, right? But there is that whole thing, and I've said this many times to the audiences, my audiences, is to say that there's a point where when your sign goes on my lawn, all I'm thinking is, okay, what's up? Where are we at? You're like, "You give me the update." I'm like, "Perfect. I want another update. Let's go."
Yeah,
Like, signs on my lawn. Like,
yeah,
when am I moving? Like, this house got to
yeah,
sell. Give me the service and that experience at the overall will be incredible.
yeah,
My father told me a story. He's got, drives a Lexus. He goes into the Lexus to do some of the dealership, and he makes comment to the fact that in some cases it's almost like they're looking at you like, yeah, you're in our dealership. Where he's like, it used to be like you go buy like a nicer vehicle, they look at you when you walk in the door and they're thinking, we got to take care of you. And he's not somebody that
yeah.
wants people on hand and knee for him. It's not whatsoever. But
Yeah,
I would
sure.
parallel the same thing and say you get to a hotel that might be a fancier hotel.
Yeah,
It used to be the differentiating factor behind the high end hotel to, let's say, the chain hotel was
yeah,
like that level of service that
yeah,
expectation of you're going to be, maybe the door's going to open for you. It's going to be a Mr.
yeah,
Greenspan versus just a David, whatever.
yeah, yeah.
I feel like many
Feels good.
cases that's been lost. So
Yeah,
I love your answer on if everybody in this industry on a regular basis can continue to remember that it is a people business, leverage the technology. Remember it's a people business and do what you can to create the best service possible, that customer service, that experience. I believe that's where we do remain relevant.
yeah, absolutely.
I really
Yeah,
do.
it's hard to replace that feeling. Very hard to replace that feeling with technology, right? You walk into the Ritz Carlton, it's not going to feel the way it feels with technology. It's just not. It's too
Right.
impersonal. It's too cold, and you have to do too much work. right? Technology is not quite at a point where it does the work. Technology facilitates you doing the work, right? It's an
Right.
efficiency driver, cuts out the middleman. They pay someone less at Loblaws so you could scan your own groceries, right? They don't have that job anymore. They put in some machines. That doesn't feel good because you're doing more work, right? We don't like work. We're all a little bit allergic to work, right? We like
You know,
things to be easy and for things to happen for us.
it's interesting you bring it up. We had a session at the mastermind where we talked, and I'm not going to share a lot about this because, again, if you weren't there, you weren't there. I told you that was
I'll be there
more
next
like
time.
at the people that were listening to it prior, going, should I go? Should I not go? If you didn't come, too bad. But no, we did talk about that, and when we got into the topic, one of our speakers talked about culture, experience, and whatnot. They brought up a point, and they said, you go to the game. And it used to be that you're walking by and you'd get there. And I think one of my attendees said the same thing, but like you walk by all the stands of popcorn and everything else, and like you pass by and maybe you buy it. But then you skip it, you get to your seat, and all of a sudden, what do they have? They got people walking up and down the stairs with the stuff, and you're like,
Yeah.
can't get away from it. So you don't have to get up. Well, now what they also do is they say, hey, pull out your phone, scan the code, order it on your phone. If you don't want to talk to anybody, you could just get it delivered to you.
Yeah.
Now, the spin that he put on it was not, let's say, the stadium. We'll use Rogers Center's example, whatever was just there last night. It's not the stadium going, we're going to take down, we're going to drop the level of service we provide.
No.
The way he explained it was he goes, different people want different things. And it was just a little paradigm shift for me where I went,
Good.
I like the approach, but I'm also at the
Yeah.
point where it's like, okay, but you've given me options rather than just gone
Yeah.
down this one road.
Yes. And the most important thing is you didn't have to get up in either circumstance. The pain point that's solving is getting up.
Right.
That's the pain point, right? The technology solves you don't have to talk to anyone, or you can flag down the lady and ask for popcorn. So
Right.
Either way, you didn't have to go through the pain. People hate pain. That's all, good business ideas, technology, they solve for a pain point, right? And technology also has to be not just a little bit better, right? Technology has to be so much better that you're willing to change because change is also uncomfortable. So that person that doesn't want to talk, like ordering a pizza online, right? Because who calls the number anymore, right? It's so much better. It is so much better. You didn't have to wait to get the guy and he can't hear what you're saying. You have to repeat it, right? Give a credit card number over the phone. Like, that's terrible. It's all messy. It's easier. We like it better, right? Uber is a good example. Waze is a good example, right? There's lots of technology that makes things so much better that everyone went, yeah, this is it. And it's highly adoptable. Look at Broker Bay, right? Everyone loved it because it was that much better. You look at some CRMs as an example.
Yep.
Nah, not as much, right? Not that much better.
You bring up Uber. I took the Uber home instead of the GO train last night.
Yeah, I would have too.
The tip I put in ended up being 3 times the amount of the tip that I put in.
Oh.
Woke up to that email this morning. Went, what happened?
Yeah.
And I, had a really awesome conversation with the driver on the way home. Really, really cool conversation. So quite frankly, I over tipped him, but like this was like 3 times over, and I wasn't going that high. It almost matched like the entire ride. So I kind of I was like bumbling around with the Uber app, going like, who can I contact to just say, hey, I think something went wrong here. And I got to tell you, just on the heels of this conversation right now, that was a pain in the butt. Now, lo and behold, just before you and I went live, I actually have an email response from them, and the whole thing's solved. But let me tell you that the whole process of trying to get to where I wanted to get to solve the issue was semi-frustrating. So I'll put the bow on this and say, because I love this, okay? We open this up by saying sales and marketing. Is it a people business? It is, but we should embrace the tech a little bit too. How do we remain relevant? It's about the experience, the service we provide. Now we come back to, do we prefer the online order? Do we not prefer it? And I go right back to yesterday's session and go, give me options. So where I'm going to bring this home for everybody tuned in now is, again, as you're doing something and you're out there speaking with people and they're responsive to certain things and maybe not to others. They want to see done, they want that email or that text instead of maybe that phone call on the daily, whatnot. Learn to understand who your audience is. Try to serve them as best as possible. Deliver that level of service that them as individuals are expecting. And maybe off the top, there's some, screening processes that you do, some question asking that you do to try to figure out what that is. Do you prefer to communicate like this? Do you prefer to communicate like that? Understand who you're working with, and then embrace both the tech and the people business to make the best experience possible for people. Karen, as we tie this up, because I am just having too much fun with you. I want to go down so many more roads about marketing with you right now, but I'm gonna watch the clock on both angles. So, um, very brief couple last questions here.
Yeah,
One, and we ask every single one of our guests this question:
sure.
how do you know it's been a successful day for you?
Helping people, right? It's helping people. And I think it's what hopefully what all of our clients or all of our realtors would say as well, right? That's what this business is about.
I and thank you. I was at the Jays game. I coach a baseball team, so I'm very much in the baseball game. And like, there's this thing of like batting 1,000. Nobody bats 1,000. We're batting 1,000. Here's the deal. I've asked that question so many times, and nobody ever brings up money.
Yeah,
The answer is never how much money did I
that's a good
make,
point.
how many
Yeah,
deals did I do. It never comes up. 9 times, probably 9.9 times out of 10, it's that four-letter word. You expanded it to helping, but like help
yeah,
people. Did I do good today?
yeah.
So thank you for keeping my average up. Any final words from you to help our audience get out there, build some mind share so they could get more market share?
Yeah. I loved what you said about giving people options. So I've learned something today here as well, which is incredible. I'm bringing that back to my people. I would say to people, don't get discouraged, right? It's tough, right? We get it. You
Mhm.
hear a lot of people feeling a bit discouraged about the market, right? It's been a tough market for the last few years, right? Even COVID was tough for its own reasons. Um, Bidding wars are tough. Like there's all sorts of things that are going on right now that are a challenge. Focus on two things, right? You're focusing on fundamentals. I know you talk a lot about that, right? It's
Mhm.
and everyone does about doing the work, right? Um, if you have a place to go to work, go to work. That will help you be around people, feed off their energy. Don't. This is not the time to lock yourself up in the house and fret alone. Like go out and be with your people, be with your colleagues, your brokerage, etc. And see the positive, right? It's not a good market, it's not a bad market, it's a market. So how are you going to work in this market, right? And if you do the work, it will turn out. Right? We've talked a lot about how during this time people can build a lot of market share if they do the work. So
Mhm.
don't focus so much on the short-term gratification. Focus on the long term, right? If you're putting the building blocks in now, you will get there in the long term. It's a guarantee. Like it's really, if you do the work, it will come. And that's a beautiful thing about this industry.
I always say if you put in the effort, you will get the results. Thank
Agreed.
you very much. Well said. Very, very, very well put. Where can people find you, connect with you if anybody wanted to learn more about you or the things you're doing? Is there
Yeah.
somewhere we shall direct them?
Sure. So my handle is Karen Yolevski. You can find me on Instagram and Facebook and all that wonderful stuff online. And would love to connect with everybody out there. And I hope we get to do this again, David. It was fun.
This has been an absolute blast. We talked market, we talked marketing. Your insights were amazing today, and it was an absolute pleasure of a conversation. So I thank you very, very much for joining me on the MindShare podcast today.
Thanks.
You are either watching us live, you were watching this recording, maybe you went to my website, mindshare101.com. And while you're there, be sure to download your free copy of the Ultimate Marketing Bundle. Again, this is our 31-page ebook. It's got a 90-day social media content calendar in there, all of it in place to help you build more mindshare so that you get more market share. A reminder as well that if you want to talk about personalized one-to-one coaching, an in-person keynote talk for your upcoming event, and or ongoing virtual training, just get in touch with me. We'll set up a consultation call, learn more about what you're looking to achieve and how we will help you do just that. Also, don't forget to please go ahead and leave us a review. You can do this right here at ratethispodcast.com/mindshare101. If you're an iPhone user, I don't understand why you use an iPhone. Android's way better, but go ahead and do that on iTunes, please. And if you're an Android, of course, Spotify and any one of the major podcast platforms out there, super grateful if you take a moment to do so. Of course, connect with me on Facebook if we are not yet at Mindshare 101 and on Instagram at David Greenspan 101. I need to take this opportunity, I want to take this opportunity to thank Kits Keep in Touch Systems and REM Magazine for sponsoring the Mindshare podcast. Be sure to visit my site, mindshare101.com, learn more about these powerful companies. There's links directly there for you so you can see how they're going to help you grow your business. This has been another episode of the Mindshare podcast. Thank you for tuning in.